In this video, we're going to show you how to set up a collaboration based on an example for KPI collection. And in this case, we'd like to be able to collect a number of KPIs from different regions, different countries, across different brands. And as usual, this information is in a spreadsheet today, but how do you set it up where you can have a lot of people working on this information at the same time without having to email files back and forth and without having to manually figure out who's changed what and when? Well, the Boardwalk application engine can be used to take any existing application process run in Excel and turn it into a collaborative application powered by a database. So I've taken this KPI example as a standalone spreadsheet, and we put it inside the Boardwalk environment. And you'll notice a couple things. First off is that some of the areas have been set up so they're not editable. Other areas have been added so that you have information about who's changed what and when. But one of the data changes is we added a comments column, because we find when people are working with spreadsheets, they tend to email spreadsheets back and forth, and then they type a whole bunch of things in the email saying, hey, look at this, look at that. Well, the Boardwalk system gives you a database to store this information with changes by users over time. Now, for the users themselves, the biggest thing they'll see is that rather than just have the spreadsheet data itself, they're now going to have some command buttons up on top where they're able to submit and refresh, which is the equivalent of I want to send changes to other people, or I want to be able to refresh changes from other people. And then also some information about when was it last updated and who was the user. But then we're also going to control kind of how people interact with the data. So you'll notice here that I've got region, country, brand. Well, maybe I want to set it up so that different people can only see different sets of information. Well, with Boardwalk, you can use any of the columns of data and say, I want to put some access control around that such that the user APAC in this particular example is only able to work with the data from the region APAC. And maybe the brand manager for brand 1 is only going to see the data associated with brand 1. So today, what do you have to do? You have to go ahead and you have to cut and paste this information, send it out to a whole bunch of different people, and then manually put it back together. With Boardwalk, you can set it up so that when the user logs in, they only see specific information. Now, the other things that are in this file is there's pick lists. You can see here where I'm able to go in and pick different brands and different KPIs. So this is using standard Excel functionality where you can say, I'd like to take some of this information and manage it centrally. And then there's also reports where I'd like to be able to look at a consolidated set of the information and present it in reporting inside of Excel or even external applications so you can see how the data has changed. Well, once you go through the authoring process with Boardwalk, you're left with an empty template. And an empty template simply has a welcome page that says download your data, start working with the information. So right here, I'm assuming the role of the consulting manager. But let me switch over and switch to the design framework template, the user template by itself. And we'll say, let's go ahead and download this data. And what happens is it basically checks to make sure that all your connectivity is correct. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to log in as consult underbar APAC here. And what this does is you take this template and you provide it out as an empty template to all the users, and then they use the same template, and there's actually no data inside the workbook until the person logs in. So in this case, there's just the reporting tab, the brand's metric lookup, and now it's going to the database and it's grabbing the most recent information for the consulting APAC user, and it's populating those tabs inside the workbook such that they can only see the information they're supposed to work on. Once it's done, then it renames the file so you have just the active data. And then once that data is loaded, the user is now able to go ahead and interact with the system and share these changes with the other users. So as you can see, it's building out the workbook right now. Here's the user access page. And for the demo, we've left this visible, but typically this is not accessible. But then here's the data for the APAC user. And if you remember, we set it up so that this user can only see region APAC. So the rows are not even in the workbook. It's not like the rows are hidden. They're literally not here. And it's also set up with the most recent refresh from when the data is brought in. So now I can make some changes here, and I can say, instead of more updates, I'll say more changes, and I'll go in and I'll say, I'm going to make this be 104, and maybe I'm going to make this be 95. And I'm also going to come in here and say, well, let's add a new row. So I'll say Boardwalk, copy a row below this selection, and then it grabs the information and it copies a new row, and you can set up kind of a workflow in here to say, you know what, when I add new rows, I want to give people the ability to change the data, but otherwise don't let them change the data. So this gives you the ability to go in and add metrics that are specific to a particular region. They can be done here, or as we noted here, they could be done on this page. But now I've gone in and said this is a new row, and I think I'll say this is another new row. And maybe I'll make one other change up here and say that this should be 85. Now as I'm doing this, I'm working in isolation. So that means all my changes are being done. I'm able to take a look at what the different changes are inside of Excel. But when I'm ready to share, rather than email, I come in and I say submit. And when I submit, it looks at the changes that are inside the workbook, and it says, well, detect the information that's been changed by this user, submit that to the database, and then enter a transaction comment. So I'm going to say these are my updates. Actually, I got to click there, my updates. I'll say push this to the database. And without having to send any files back and forth, or without having to do check in or check out, it goes in, finds the changes that have been completed, takes that information, submits it to the database, and then updates the data with not only the information inside the database itself, but it's gone in and it said, here are these two changes that were done here at 9/7 in the afternoon, so you can see on a row-by-row basis. Now if I switch back over to the Consulting Manager, which is where we started, and I say, okay, well, what would this person say? Now of course there can be email notifications, but if I come in here and say, well, refresh this, then what it does is it looks at the database, but now as the user Consult Manager, and it says what changes have been done to this data that's shared that are not reflected in my workbook. Go get those changes and bring them in and show them to me. So it doesn't overwrite what you've done inside the workbook. If you had updated a cell that was being updated, you can have a little conflict manager pop up and say, hey, this one's been changed and you've changed it. Which one do you want to put to the database? But otherwise, the Boardwalk database will show you the values that have changed. You can see here, it shows me the old value, the new value. You can go in at any time and say, you know what, it says more changes now, but what did this say over time? And if I show me the changes for this over the past week, then on demand you can say, well, create a history tab for me and show me who's updated this cell and when over what period of time. And likewise, I can come in and say, well, show me how many changes have been done to this data over this period of time. And what it does is it shows you how the database works. As people interact with the data, it's constantly looking at the most recent information, and it's determining what this person has done, or if this is an integration from an external system, this could be latest sales order data from Oracle. But it always is keeping track, saying, what did the person do? Did they add rows? Did they update cells? Then you can come back and say, you know what, I want to see what did this person do yesterday or 2 days ago or 3 days ago. And you can recreate the data as of any time. So just like I went in and said, show me a cell history, I can go in here and it can show me what the old value was, what the new value was. Here's the new row that we set up down here. And of course, this means now that you always have the most recent data. It's always stored in a single place. So you have a single version of the truth. You have change management built in for multiple users. You have access control. And the reporting data that you rely on always shows the most recent information from everybody that's working with the system. In this case, an application for KPI reporting. Thanks.